Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to this reporter's special, an edition dedicated to our colleague captured and held by the FARC rebels in Colombia for some 33 days. Romeo Longoria was filming a report for us in April with the Colombian army when the unit he was with was ambushed. Romeo is still undergoing treatment for the gunshot wound that he received. Romeo Longoria is with us here in the studio. Romeo, your ordeal that you've been through is something that most of us can only imagine, the kind of thoughts that went through your head, and obviously being shot at the same time. Tell us what went through your mind when literally all hell broke out around you.
Eh bien,
well, when Sergeant Cortez was hit, I realized that he was not only seriously wounded, but he was dying. And for some time now, I'd said that I have to leave because the situation was getting critical. They're all going to be killed. And that was the point when really I decided to get away, do everything I could to leave. And I had flak jacket so as not to be confused with the soldier. Decided to remove my helmet, and the jacket wasn't easy, whistling overhead. That's the first decision I took, and it was a moment of fear.
Fear and lucidity at the same time. You mention Sergeant Cortez, the Colombian army soldier who was responsible for your safety there, and he was the man who was injured, and he died beside you.
Yeah, that's right. A man who, no doubt, we'll talk about him. I mean, he remained very worthy, very courageous up till the end, and very impressive man. And it was a very powerful moment, that.
We will talk more about this in a moment, Romeo. Thank you very much, and it's good to see you here with us. Let's take a look then at this special report made by Romeo Longoria in Colombia, his special report about the events that put his name in the world headlines and also highlighted the complex situation that is still going on in Colombia.
I thought I was filming a routine anti-drugs operation, but things went badly wrong.
Capitán. Solicito, tengo tres heridos. Sargento, camarógrafo y el soldado.
These men belong to the Anti-Narcotics Trafficking Brigade, an elite unit of the Colombian army. Their mission, to destroy laboratories used to make cocaine in enemy territory.
Capitán, ¿es delicado este operativo?
Sí, bastante delicado porque la zona en la que vamos es de mucha injerencia por el frente del frente 15. Lo más seguro es que haya presencia de terroristas sobre el sector donde vamos a asaltar los objetivos.
¿Qué puede pasar?
Podemos entrar en combate, lo más seguro es que vamos a entrar en combate con los terroristas.
Terrorists are what the Colombian army call the FARC, Marxist guerrillas who've been engaged in an armed struggle against the state for 50 years. A dog accompanies the troops to help sniff out mines. Today, 30 men, split into 2 helicopter units, are set to storm 2 cocaine labs.
Cada vez que nosotros le destruimos un laboratorio de pasta base de coca, afectamos directamente sus finanzas. La idea de estas operaciones es mantener la sorpresa. Y entrando a la madrugada es una de las horas en las que menos esperan los terroristas que nosotros entremos al área de operación. ¡A sus derechos!
An armband to help the soldiers identify one another in combat. The FARC's gunmen wear uniform too. Fighter helicopters and night vision goggles. The war on drugs is high-tech and expensive, supervised and financed by the United States. And for the moment, it's a war with no end in sight.
salgan, 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 salgan. Salga todo el mundo de la vivienda, salga todo el mundo de la vivienda. Buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Cómo está?
Bien será.
Tropas del batallón contra el narcotráfico número 1. Solicito una requisa por favor a su vivienda. Helios, escorpión, Helios, escorpión, Helios.
And here is the laboratory. It's a simple way of turning coca leaves into paste, the first step in the manufacture of cocaine.
¿Hace cuánto que no hay los bandidos acá?
Mano, de día no.
¿Cuánto? O sea, ¿quién entrega el producido de la pasta de coca? ¿Ah?
Yo lo vendo.
¿A quién se lo vende?
En San Isidro son los compradores. Viene gente y uno vende.
Si pueden observar allá, está lo que es la hoja de coca picada ya en el proceso para convertirla en pasta base. Posteriormente, cuando ya obtienen la pasta base, es vendida en el corregimiento de San Isidro. Allá están los terroristas del Frente 15, que son quienes directamente realizan la recepción de este producto, y ellos son los que se la venden a los traficantes que vienen del interior del país o de las zonas costeras a comprarla para posteriormente hacer el proceso de cristalización.
¿Usted, señor, por qué está sembrando coca? Yo, porque por aquí lo único que le da eso a uno la coquita. ¿Qué más hacemos? ¿No hay otros cultivos? ¿No hay nada que rinda? No, pues que vea cómo está de pésima la trocha. No, vea, tengo yuca y por dónde la voy a sacar, plátano y no hay por dónde sacarlo. Está la carretera está muy pésima, no hay por dónde. Y lo único que le da poco es eso a uno, pero ya no queda ni mucho como para la comida nomás.
¿Cuánto puede ser así?
Ole, no me queme la timbita, mano, que no es ni mío.
¿Usted me lo lleve o qué, hermano? ¿La guerrilla la compra o que la coca la compra para acá la guerrilla? ¿O no?
Pues, yo no he comprado, yo he hecho papahuile en la Unión, en San Donde haya plata y pucha, no, de pobre que le toca hacer.
Que le prenda otro, que le prenda otro. Está todo mojado los pies.
Quien la compra hay que vendérsela.
Ahora ya, ahora. Profe, eso allí. Mándalo.
Colombia lleva como más de 40 años, ¿no? Quemando laboratorios.
Sí, alrededor de unos 30, 40 años lleva haciendo esa labor de la destrucción de laboratorios. Pero desde el año 2000 hacia acá, que fue creada la Brigada Especial contra el Narcotráfico, esta labor se ha incentivado, ya que esta es nuestra función principal, destruir las redes de apoyo al terrorismo, como es el narcotráfico, la producción de las mismas.
¿Y piensa que acabar con la coca y con la cocaína es posible?
Sí, es un problema solucionable.
Another photo of armed men in front of a burning lab. It's good for PR, but it probably won't be long before the facility's rebuilt.
¿Es mejor no tardar mucho en la zona?
Sí, es mejor no tardar porque... por seguridad.
Mi coronel, en 010909-750741. Confirmo.
There's no time to lose. The guerrillas are lying in wait, ready to attack troops and helicopters. A smoke grenade signals the landing point. It's a critical moment. The helicopter pilot has just 1 minute to pick up the troops. In the end, this evacuation goes smoothly, and the team heads for a second lab a few minutes away.
El otro es más difícil, en la juega, ¿listo? El otro es más pesado, en la juega.
The Caqueta region is a long-standing FARC bastion. Covering coca fields, the army call it Colombia's Vietnam.
Mírenlo acá, ahí está escondido. No, si esta mierda, vea, está lleno de chongos. Dígale que nos desembarque acá, que hijo de putas.
But the operation continues as planned. For some of these men, it will be their last.
¡Rápido, qué! ¡Ojo la maraña! ¡Ojo esa maraña! ¡Ojo esa maraña!
The drill remains the same. A helicopter drops off the first commando unit, then takes off to provide cover for the next group. Suddenly, a volley of gunfire. Impossible to tell where it's coming from or how many people are shooting. Captain Gomez calls base.
¡Sube! ¡Prende el radio! ¡Prende el radio rápido! ¡Estamos en combate, cazador! ¡Estamos en combate! ¡A ver ya! ¡Sálganse del hueco! Páseme a mi coronel urgente. Dígale que entramos en combate. En el segundo punto entramos en combate. Esos son esos manes que se metieron a las casas. El problema es que tenemos que pasar por esas casas y los manes están metidos en esas casas.
Es correcto, mi capitán. Los manes ya arrancaron y están en las casas.
As his colleagues work to secure the area, Captain Gomez and his men hurry to the second lab.
¿Y acá no puede haber mina, capitán?
Sí, todo el mundo debe pasar por donde pasamos todos.
¿Por qué? ¿Por qué?
Porque generalmente esos bandidos colocan las minas, entonces por seguridad todos cruzamos por el mismo punto.
The intense humidity makes progress slow. As the soldiers tramp across the coca fields, they're on unfamiliar territory.
Comuníqueme con mi coronel.
The guerrillas remain out of sight, but for now the shooting's stopped. The men reach their second target, and it's not quite as they'd expected.
¿Es un laboratorio eso?
Sí, pero está bien.
Está en funcionamiento. Está en funcionamiento.
Está aquí como se mantiene cambiando. Con el fin de evadir los controles que se le hacen entonces en varios laboratorios.
The group pulls back to high ground around the house and inspects the area.
Señora, le voy a pedir un favor que por favor permanezca en la casa, ¿bueno?
Señor.
Esos terroristas están disparando hacia todo lado. Es por la seguridad de ustedes mismos.
Sabemos que hay un Dios en los cielos y que es el único que nos favorece.
Yo le entiendo eso, pero es por su seguridad. Atienda mi recomendación, por favor.
The soldiers interrogate the civilians.
¿Y ustedes de dónde escucharon los disparos?
Nosotros estábamos allá en una casita en el filo.
¿De dónde escucharon los disparos?
Pues no.
¿Pero cómo no?
Como es helicóptero tan duro que
No, es que no fueron los de helicóptero.
una jornada de trabajo y...
The controls are strict.
¿Cómo se llaman? Fecha de nacimiento.
Captain Gomez's men are tense. Here in enemy territory, any civilians regarded as a potential guerrilla.
No lo conozco, señor.
Yo le quiero todos los días. Vamos hasta Miramar.
Bueno, necesitamos requisarlo de todas formas.
Ah, sí, claro, hijo, hágale.
Ese cilindro.
No, un cilindro que mandan para arriba.
¿Con creyentes?
Pagan la moto y descienden de la moto. Quítense en las botas, hágame el favor.
Sí, puede ser, mi cual. A todo el personal se le está diciendo. Aquí la gente, unos dicen que no han visto nada, no escucharon nada.
Yo le digo, ofrezca plata, que soy alguien tiene que decir alguna mierda. Aquí no he podido sacar, marica, un apoyo. Imagina un apoyo tan hijo de puta. Llevo más de una hora acá peleando para que me saquen una hijo de puta compañía. No he podido, hermano, y si no vamos a hacer alguna mierda.
Estamos esperando que mejoren las condiciones climáticas para hacer la extracción, que se le quite.
Oye, venga, chírate, venga.
A ver, uy, marica. Tío.
Tienen pero ubicados.
Y bueno, están envolviendo por todo lado. Marica, aquí están tratando de ubicarnos cómo estamos ubicados en este momento. Tenemos que replegarnos y tratar de quedar todos en un mismo sitio.
Allá, aquel cerro.
¿En dónde?
No se vaya a parar, ¿oyó? No se vaya a parar.
The FARC are attacking further ahead. Time to deploy the machine guns.
No. Dígale que no dispare más, que no dispare más.
No le suelte. Ya sabemos que es Remington, no le suelte. Ellos están tirando uno por uno. Estamos soltando mucho.
No más.
No suelte, Murillo. Ya dieron la orden que no soltaran.
Cuédele, me mantengo, cambio.
Esperemos el apoyo aéreo, ya viene.
Puede ser. Ahí está pasándose encima mío. ¿Sí ve la vivienda? Puede ser, Epicore.
Bad news. According to HQ, the troops have landed in an area held by a FARC boss.
Le metimos un cabecilla.
It means the guerrillas are heavily armed and there's plenty of them. Cue airstrikes on their positions.
¿Más hacia dónde? ¿A dónde, Murillo? ¿A dónde? Rápido, dígame a dónde. Esa maraña, pero un poquitico más hacia el unos 50 metros más adelante. Sí. Pero vean, nos empezaron a dar con todo desde allá, nos están dando con todo desde allá. Búho, tírelas más, 200 metros más hacia adelante, atrás de las viviendas hacia el occidente. De las viviendas hacia el occidente.
With some of his men already wounded, Captain Gomez decides to get me out of the combat zone. He hands me my microphone.
¿Cómo ve el aeroperativo? ¿Cómo anda ya la situación ahora?
Está tensa. Ha llegado más enemigo, entonces nos tienen ya cercados.
The captain stays put, and Sergeant Cortez is now charged with my protection. The sergeant takes me to a nearby hill, protected by another group of soldiers. A helicopter is due to bring in reinforcements and evacuate me along with the wounded.
¿Me comió mi capitán? ¿Mi capitán?
Aquí ya estamos en el punto. Mi capitán, ya estamos en el punto. Aproveche el fuego, aproveche la entrega de armas y se va replegando vías. Se va replegando para que quedemos fuertes en un solo punto. Toda la compañía.
No, negro Oscar, yo estoy acá, estoy oculto. Si salgo al claro, es fijo que me hostigan, entonces estoy acá oculto con la ametralladora emplazada.
The helicopters make several attempts at landing. But come under constant fire from the FARC. On the ground, the soldiers are on their own, the only cover coming from above. A combat helicopter arrives. Followed by a bomber.
Excelente. Excelente. Ahí fue.
Despite being under fire from above, the guerrillas move fast. They're operating in small groups and come into view only fleetingly.
Afirma, afirma, por un claro. Ahí se van moviendo. Oh, ahí veo otros 4. Mírelo, mírelo.
Ay, sí.
Vienen para acá, mi capitán.
Uy, no, mi santo, la ametralladora. La ametralladora.
¿Dónde están?
En esta cuchilla, papi, en esa cuchilla donde pasa el filito de los palos de los órganos.
Otro 5.
Uy, no, mi sargento, la ametralladora.
Ya, cuento 10. Agáchese.
Van hacia mi capitán.
Hay otro grupo allá.
En el Yarumo.
As the guerrillas launch an assault on the hill, the soldiers prepare for combat at close quarters.
Ese silencio me parecía muy dudoso. Para nosotros es un trabajo normal como cualquier otro.
¿Y su familia qué dice?
¿Familia? Familia no les gusta. Porque uno, pues, acá uno se expone mucho y lógicamente los deja solos, ¿no? Entonces me dicen que no.
The gunshots are getting ever closer.
Morillo, replieguese un poquito. Métase acá.
¿Cómo?
Este es este huesito. Ay, colocó bueno esa vaina. Fue puta. El fantasma y el arpía ya listo. No se aparte mucho, Murillo, no se aparte mucho. Aquí únicamente aquí abajito y listo, comando, ¿listo? Todos uniditos acá pegaditos. Y nos toca hacernos reventar aquí, nos hacemos reventar aquí pegaditos todos, asegurando un perímetro. Que nos están dividiendo. Ahorita a mi coronel que mande la cobra,
Se nos están copando porque entonces... Oiga eso.
Nos están copando, mande la cobra, mi capitán. Solicite una vez ahí, comando.
Dígale, mi llanto, acá no tenemos dónde cubrirnos, Nos están dando de todos los lados.
Ya nos están sacando al claro, esos malparidos. Ahí ya tienen a mi sargento a veces. Solicite la cobra, mi capitán, cambio. Que nos acabe
The soldiers sense the guerrillas are gaining the upper hand. The situation is critical.
Mi capitán, solicito. Mi capitán, vea, le informo. Están llegando por la parte de atrás. En el centro, mi capitán. Se está metiendo la maraña. Están pasando la carretera.
Me están dando a mí.
Mi capitán, ¿se puede replicar hacia donde estamos nosotros? ¿Por qué no replica hacia donde estamos nosotros?
I've been hit in the lower arm. I'm lucky. Next to me, Sergeant Cortes is mortally wounded.
Aguante, aguante, hermano.
Tengo 4 soldados heridos.
Aló, capitán, ¿me escucha?
Sí, hermano.
Sí, estoy herido, necesitamos apoyo rápido. No mueve, está herido, está mal.
Venga. Rayo.
Estoy herido.
Están herido. Capitán, mi capitán. Solicito, tengo 3 heridos. Sargento, el camarógrafo y el soldado.
Mira, ¿para qué anda? Tengo 4 soldados heridos. Tengo uno herido en la cabeza y tengo herido en el trasero también.
Coge el fusil, apunte para allá.
¿Cómo?
Coge el fusil, apunte para allá.
No, hermano, yo no uso armas. No sirvo para eso.
Granada, ey. Chaleco, de este. Agáchese. Bien.
Oye, yo me abro porque con ustedes soy un blanco, ¿vale?
A second soldier's been hit by shrapnel from a grenade. The FARC are just meters away. I crawl away and hide in the bushes. I cut the camera and make away with the footage.
I'm sure you all agree, an extremely moving and powerful account of the situation in Colombia, and of course Romeo Longoa's personal story. Romeo here with us now in the studio. It is a relief, Romeo, let me tell you, for all of us here at France 24 that you are back alive and with us. So thank you for managing to do that. We are relieved to have you back. Tell us what happened after the last frames that you filmed in your report.
Well, right after the moment when I removed the memory cards, because we no longer film with the old small cassettes memory cards, I removed them from the camera, throw the camera away, saying that if the FARC see me with a camera from afar, I knew they were about to arrive. They see me with a camera, the black object in my hands, they might think it's a gun and they'll shoot at me, so I throw the camera away. I hide the cards in this little pouch that I have around my belt, and I crawl backwards for about 10-15 meters, and I hide in a bush. First of all, I check, make sure I have all the memory cards, and then I make sure that I'm not wounded elsewhere than in the arm. With my hand, I run it over my body. There's no blood, nowhere where I'm in pain, so I realize just injured. I see my fingers are moving, so say to myself that it's not that serious, that the nerve endings, the tendons aren't affected. see the situation with bullets whistling overhead. I'm about 10, 50 meters away from the soldiers shooting at me. I look around the bush where I'm hiding. Prior to that, I remove my T-shirt. I'm bare-chested, saying that men would never shoot at a bare-chested man. And so after a couple of minutes, I see a group of 3-4 guerrillas with rifles arrived to shoot at the military. The guerrillas about 10-15 meters away, and they're going to pass my bush. I say I'm lucky I've seen them. If they pass my bush where I'm hiding and see me hiding, they could well shoot at me immediately. So as they move closer, I decide to emerge, hands up, not to shout so as not to scare them, to speak loudly and clearly. It's the only point for 1-2 hours where I get up. I was crawling beneath the bullets for a couple of hours. There I stand up, head to these men. I'm a civilian, a journalist. I'm wounded, don't shoot, I don't have a weapon, and that's how I fall in the hands of the FARC.
It must have been an incredibly terrifying situation, but I'm amazed that you managed to remain so lucid. You managed to keep hold of the pictures. Is that a journalist instinct, a cameraman's instinct?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's really a journalist instinct which becomes a survival instinct. The camera, the fact that I'm a journalist, really justifies our presence in the middle of such a conflict. We haven't really looked for this sort of experience, but it justifies that, and it means that we can remain very lucid and become almost machines and maybe be fortunate in finding the right reflexes at the right time. It's because we have this distance. Thanks to the camera, we're shooting a film, we have a legitimacy, we know why we're there. We're there to provide an account. We have this kind of coldness that can save us in that moment.
Romeo, at the same time, you've been injured, you've been shot. And, of course, the sergeant who was looking after you, he's been shot as well. And, of course, he dies. And, you know, this is obviously a trauma in itself. Tell us about that. And, of course, tell us about the time you met his family.
Yeah, it was very powerful. I met him after a moment of joy, just after I'd met up with my brother and sister, came to see me in Bogota. My friends, Pascal Mariani, a colleague and friend who also came to see me and find me on the ground. All of a sudden I got home just before flying back to France the day after my release, and there I saw the mother of Sergeant Cortez, Afro-Colombians, people from the West Coast, very poor area, saw her brother. His younger brother was there who looked very much like Sergeant Cortez. Very powerful moment because the intensity of the fighting, everything that happened. Of course, during my detention, I'd thought a lot about Sergeant Cortez, and everything came back to me immediately. It was very powerful for them, for me. We talked. What were the last words spoken by Sergeant Cortez? Amongst his last words, spoken about his family. He said something very strong, very powerful, that his family were worried about him, didn't want him to go so far to wage war, and we feel this as journalists, identified with that, and that had created proximity between him and me. It was a very powerful meeting.
Clearly an emotional time, and I can only stress that, you know, you're a journalist, I'm a journalist, but, you know, our experiences are so different. I've never been through anything like you've been through. I can only imagine what it was like. Equally, because there was great concern, we all thought that, you know, the worst might have happened. We all thought that perhaps you were dead. And then video image emerges of you in captivity, smiling. And clearly you're in a state of you've been injured, we can see that, but you're smiling. How could you still have a smile? What was the context of that film, this film that the FARC released of you to show that you were still alive? And how did you come to still be in such a positive mood?
Well, that's a Very good question, especially since this video made a lot of people smile. They said, well, he's in great shape, but what's this big stir? He seems to be smiling, so he's on holiday with the FARC. In fact, this video is not a proof of life. It was shot the day of the fighting. It was shown to the press at the end of May, where it was shot 28th of April. It's a video film shot right after I was wounded, captured by the FARC. I've just been very quickly treated. My arm was wounded. I must have really high adrenaline level, very stressed out. I wasn't able to demonstrate to the FARC that I was a journalist. I lost my press card in the fighting, so I'm surrounded by some 30 people who all think I could well be a US or Israeli military advisor. What's more, I've lost a lot of blood all over my clothes. That's why I'm just with a towel around my waist, and I'm smiling for two reasons. Firstly, because I'm suspected of being an agent, a spy by the FARC. I'm showing them nothing to hide, that I'm a journalist, and also for an hour I really stared death in the face. I was very scared. I thought this would be my last film report, and here I'm delighted I'm still alive. I survived this ordeal, so maybe I'm on a high, and that's why I'm very much smiling.
I can understand the words you're saying. I can only imagine that my own personal reaction might be a little bit different. I don't think I'd be smiling, and I think many people would probably go with my version rather than yours. But you are Romeo Langlois, and you've produced a brilliant film, and clearly you have a rapport with these people that is obviously based on the fact you've been in Colombia for a long time and understand a lot about the situation on both sides, and that shows in your reporting. Can I ask you about the medical treatment that you underwent there with the FARC? I mean, clearly you've been shot in the arm. And these people, you know, they're in the jungle. What kind of medical treatment were they able to give you?
Well, you need to know that FARC's been at war for 40 years, and so they've been treating shotgun wounds for 40 years. I'd already filmed occasions, FARC surgeons coming from the towns in order to operate men wounded in action. The time of this video that we're seeing here, what they did was, first of all, to very summarily close the wound to stop me losing blood. The next day they immediately cleansed the wound and gave me antibiotics, which I'd asked for. And then there were already several FARC wounded at that point. There was blood everywhere. I was very worried about the cleanliness of their instruments. And I said, are you sure that the syringe is clean, the scalpel is clean, etc.? And the guerrillas said, well, you're a bit stressed out, aren't you? He said, whereas it was the situation itself that was quite stressful. After that, every day they gave me antibiotics, cleaned the wound. After 5-6 days, they were able to close the wound very professionally. As the doctors that I saw in Paris said, what they weren't able to detect was that the bone was seriously damaged, and so I needed to be operated on. They didn't have an X-ray machine, and for 33 days they said, don't worry, the bone's not affected, your arm will be okay. It allowed me to last and not to be too worried for 33 days.
Absolutely remarkable. How long did it take you to convince them that you're a journalist?
Well, when these images were filmed that we've just seen, well, all the guerrillas think I'm military. Very soon I see a leader who puts very specific questions to me, and I answer quite frankly, calmly, smiling, and there he has a doubt, and the leader says, having talked to me for some 20 minutes, says, well, listen, I believe your story, I believe you're a journalist. Having said that, you can't prove it, so you remain our prisoner, we'll keep you. I said, I know how you operate, I'm available, I'll stay with you for a few days, check my ID, and then release me, because my brother's getting married in a fortnight, and I need to attend that. He said, well, listen, we'll see. I said, but don't tie me up. I don't want to be tied up. And then it was never tied up. That evening, the next day, in fact, Saturday evening, on the Sunday, they begin to be clear, listening to the radio, French journalists working for France 24's gone missing. Then the guerrillas arrived and said, yes, you are a journalist, so we'll release you if you're a journalist, a civilian. We don't take civilians, no reason to keep you. They very soon understand I'm a journalist.
Okay, your friends, your family, your colleagues, still at this point think that possibly the worst might have happened to you. It was at this moment that the FARC issued a claim, or basically they went public, saying that they were holding Romeo Langlois.
The 15th Front informs the public that the French journalist Romeo Langlois, wearing a military uniform and captured in combat, is in our hands and is a prisoner of war. He is slightly wounded in one arm, but he has received medical attention and is out of danger.
Okay, and Romeo, now you become effectively a hostage or a prisoner, depending on how you want to look at it, with a political dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. Very strange. I mean, my status wasn't very clear. The FARC were embarrassed. I mean, they had no valid reason to hold me. They were always saying, we'll release you soon. We just have to organize things for safety reasons, but at the same time something was afoot and things were dragging on. There was this business about presidential elections, lasted a week for the runoff vote, and then the new president came into office. Prior to that I knew nothing much would happen, and then the FARC took them additional fortnight to organize a big media circus at my expense, to show to the world that they were still present, that the FARC guerrilla was considering to deliver crushing blows to the Colombian army. So my detention assumed a political dimension.
And the very fact that you were there to make a film about the Colombian army's struggle against the FARC, against their operation, clearly didn't hold that against you, and they gave you a camera so you could film your release, which clearly is, I think, a first in world journalism.
Yeah, definitely. I asked the FARC, as soon as I was taken into captivity, I started making demands, contact the Red Cross, write to my family, tell them everything's okay. I wanted them to state that I was in their hands, that anything could happen as long as people didn't know that I was in their hands. I immediately asked for a camera to continue my job and to film my detention. Took them a while, 25 days or more, almost 30 days before they gave me the camera. And the final days I was able to interview a FARC leader, ask him why they were holding me, and ask details about the military operation, because he'd led the famous military operation during which I was captured. I was able to film my release. It was a key moment that allowed me to recover my dignity as a journalist, having been as a war prisoner, as they said, for some 30 days. I was able to emerge and resist the media assault that I was the subject of, and it allowed me really to undergo this ordeal more calmly.
What are your feelings now towards the FARC rebels?
Well, the same as they were before. Unfortunately, it's not just a drug cartel, it's far more complex, an old guerrilla movement, very political, and of course I've denounced what they've done for several years now, made up of young Colombian peasants. They undergo government repression, very strong, and they live in utmost poverty, no schools, no roads, no hospital, and therefore they enroll in the guerrilla movement. And so this guerrilla movement, I think, continue to operate as long as the social, economic structures of Colombia continue to be what they are. And a movement which has a political message and is fed up with war. Been going on for 40 years, been waging war with dozens of thousands of deaths, and now wishes to lay down its arms, negotiate peace, but a peace backed up with a number of social reforms.
Álvaro Uribe, the former Prime Minister, had, well, via Twitter, a couple of fairly uncomplimentary things to say about what you were doing. The former President of Colombia, of course, had fairly unpleasant things to say about what you said about the FARC and your presence there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's quite symptomatic of the extreme division of Colombian society. Uribe is no longer president. He was between 2002 and 2008, managed to unify Colombian people around hatred for the FARC. Uribe, his father, was apparently killed by the FARC guerrilla during an abduction attempt, so the destiny of this country for the past few years has been in large part headed by this man who wanted to seek revenge, and so it's really typical of a divide in Colombian society, something that's not very surprising. It's quite outrageous. I was accused by Uribe and his clique of being close to the FARC, where I was the FARC's victim. I was expecting this type of accusation. Doesn't come as a surprise. There are many taboos. Colombian journalists can't say certain things for security reasons. The media plays a role that's sometimes been questioned. That's why I decided to speak out loud, say what many people think, that I would make myself enemies, and including the former president.
I think it's fair to say from a professional level, you kept a clear-headedness, a lucidity which is to be admired and respected, and that shows in the film you've put together. It shows in your behaviour afterwards. One question, though, that does come to mind is, you went to the jungle for France 24 for this report. If the opportunity to go back were given to you, would you go back to the jungle?
If I had both my arms, when I have both my arms back, without a doubt, yes. In the desert, too, the cities, you name it, I'll continue to do my job. That hasn't in any way changed my resolve to continue to work. I'm not going to seek out conflicts or fighting at all costs. I continue to work, tell the story on major events happening in the world today. That's my job. That's anything I can do. I love it.
Romeo, we wish you a speedy recovery. I know there's more hospital treatment to come, yes?
I believe so.
A little bit more full movement of the arm coming back, I hope? Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
I'm
the main
hopeful.
thing is you're here and you're smiling and you're with us again. Thank you very much indeed. Romeo Longois, our reporter, France 24's reporter, and that concludes this reporter's special programme dedicated to Romeo's plight, his ordeal, his work and his film that he made in Colombia. We'll leave you with the images of Romeo meeting his friends and, of course, his family in Bogota after his release. Moving images which clearly are bringing back memories for the gentleman sitting next to me, and clearly stirring memories for all of us here at France 24. You can watch this again, of course, via our website, france24.com, in French, English and in Arabic. Stay with us.